everyone, and welcome to our next panel, how to proactively be diverse and inclusive in sourcing candidates in recruitment. You might have seen me before. My name's Kylie Kendrick. I work at Durham University, and I'm the technical specialist for Esports at Durham. I'm going to pass you on to my esteemed colleagues to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jazeena McCallum. I am the People and Operations Manager at Scot Studios.
Hi guys, I'm Scot Duffy. I'm the Talent Acquisition Advisor for Dell and within EMEA.
Lovely to meet you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
No problem at all. I'm particularly not well versed in EDI and recruitment. I have a sort of holistic view of it working at Durham University. I've been part of some panel recruitment processes, but you guys are the pure experts here, so I'm just going to launch straight into these questions. How can an organisation promote a culture of curiosity as well as facilitate difficult conversations leading with EDI? I'll start with you, Scott.
Yeah, I think that naturally, I think everyone's kind of curious in the way the world's going in terms of diversity. It's a changed world from 5-10 years ago. I think from an organisation to create curiosity, it's about getting out the public domain. I suppose talking about it is a massive thing. Projects, initiatives, getting them on board and getting, I think, leadership on board as well is a massive driver of it. If your leadership are behind it, then that's going to make the business, the rest of the organisation get on board as well. And I think also not just focus on one sort of inclusion diversity, because it's got to be a mix of whether it be gender, sexuality, race. That's got to be incorporated in every business, and not just focus on one particular one. But some business do that, and that's a starting point as well for as a bare minimum.
Yes?
Yeah, brilliant. Exactly what you said. How can I add to that? But yeah, I think it's like pinpointing people within your organisation that can be the spokesperson to start, because you always need someone to take up that hold that is quite personable, to start the trust, to start the conversation, so people feel comfortable talking to people. So people can come to me like, oh, Jazz, like, you know, there's not many women here. Can I
we change that?
Yeah, like how do we actually, instead of feeling they have no one to talk to, having people that they can talk to, and again, making sure it's inclusive of all diverse groups, because if one person's not comfortable, then you're not diverse.
Yeah, so exactly, you need a safe space to begin with, you know, whether one person creates that or the organisation creates it themselves, you need something like that to start the conversations. Do you think businesses and organisations need a sort of culture of feedback? Do they need to be in touch with their recruitment and certainly their staff workforce to be able to see how they're doing? And how would a company go about that?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Definitely at Dell Technologies, we do a survey every so often. It's called Tell Dell, and it's not just about EDI, there's a lot of other things. So if someone wants to give feedback on how they feel a manager treats them, it's anonymous as well, so it's a very much a safe space. And the results paint a picture of how your employees are feeling about things. It can be something as simple as we need more coffee in the canteen. It can be something as simple as we need more lockers, which are very, very basic, but they're quite fundamental to some people. So I think having that interaction and making it anonymous is really, really important. Some people want to speak up about it, which is completely fine. They'll have a platform to do that. But I think having that sort of anonymous structure is more positive than not having it. So that's one thing we definitely do, and I know other organisations probably do something similar.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the way we do it at Scot Studios is a bit different just because we're a smaller company. Yeah. And I'm obviously the people manager, and I like to be as chatty as I can. Yeah. So I just have chats with people. Yes. And that's not always possible in bigger companies, but having people just to have chats with people, you know, have a coffee, just be like, vent to me, it's fine.
Yeah, what's up? Tell me.
And sometimes people vent to me and I can't help them. But sometimes I'm like, oh, actually, that's not right. We shouldn't be doing that. Yeah. Oh, actually, you should never have felt like that. And it ties into the last question, just having people comfortable that they can just have a chat with. Yeah. It might not go anywhere, but this is a safe space. Yes. We're not just HR, we are people, and actually the best way we're gonna as a business do good is if our people feel safe. And that's what I try to make.
I think employees need to feel like they can challenge when they need to, and for the right reasons, not just for the sake of it. And if there's an environment where they can do that, then that leads on to better and bigger things for business.
Absolutely. And just off the back of that as well, say someone did have an issue or they might have approached something wrong or did it incorrectly. Do your companies have specific training that they can then request, or do you make it mandatory for staff to go that kind of EDI training?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a code of, so we have a lot of employee resource groups which are more sort of relaxed, open forums where people can discuss these sort of things, and it's where people have got a common ground with you. So we might have one which is maybe focused on Latino ethnicity, and that's maybe people who kind of want to join that. But people who from non-backgrounds like that as well can get involved. So it just opens up conversations and opens up doors a little bit as well. And there's a bit more common ground. So again, that's informal, but it's still in public as well. So that's definitely one thing. But yeah, training, I think diversity training is something that we try and push as much as we can for sort of hiring managers within Dell. In order for them to access the recruitment process, they need to have completed certain modules, so that they're aware of these kind of things. So unconscious bias is a massive thing, obviously. We try and drive that home. Also try and support these guys as best possible. Sit in interviews as well, make sure that it's policed a little bit. You shouldn't, maybe it's a bit of a strong word, but just make sure that it's managed. There's no old school mentality.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. You find that the same? I know you're a smaller company, but I think the message would still be the same.
Yeah, it's pretty the same. Again, we're a lot more just at this stage of, if you feel like you don't understand something, coming to me and be like, oh, we're hiring someone, they're not like me. Help, and it's just been having that honest, final interview for someone that they're not like me, different gender, different colour, different background, and I can either help them or go, let's get someone else in to help. Is there someone in the company that I can be like, do you mind talking? Always asking permission, but it's always good to, if you can, use people that are already in the company where possible, but not being afraid to go outside and being like, oh no, I'm not an expert, but our recruitment's pretty the same. I'm in all the recruitment processes, not like it's policing, but it's not just to keep an eye on things. If I sometimes think you've had an ad out and then you're hiring in a day, I'm gonna be like, you need to slow your roll. Like, I understand you might have someone, but this isn't how you do it. Let's give it a week or two, make sure you've interviewed a broad spectrum, just keeping an eye on the candidates, and seeing why have you, if I've seen someone's rejected as promising, just challenging it a little bit and being like, why? Oh, something just doesn't sit right with me. And I'm like, that's your if you don't know what it is, it's probably your, I've forgotten the word now, how embarrassing.
Unbiased
conscious bias.
I think it's
conscious bias.
I said unbiased conscious, sorry.
Unbiased conscious.
I think it's also...
We're good with words here. We're great with words.
I think it's also really good to have a variation of people interviewing as well. So
100%.
Male and female, an equal... So two males interview a female might make a female candidate feel uncomfortable. Having a certain amount of shortlist of female versus male candidates to choose from as well. That's something that we definitely do proactively. It's mandatory for some vacancies. There's at least one female interviewed per every male as well, because that drives up the number of females that are in the business as well. So that's a basic principle, but it works really well.
Yeah. That's great. Good to know.
Nothing to add to that because
fantastic. Nail on the head. Done. Next one. So how can you ensure you recruit a diverse pool of applicants? Is there a way to measure diversity and inclusion in recruitment? I'll start off with you, Jess.
Yeah, it's quite tricky, especially if you're already in a company that are not quite diverse, whether it's their own fault or not. It is quite tricky, but it's just being aware. Actually, 90% of the workforce are all white straight men.
Yes.
They're great. We're not going to kick them out. But what can we do? And it's sometimes if you're paying for recruiters anyway, go into the recruiters. Can you help me get diverse groups? I will do the LinkedIn for everyone else, but I need help.
Yes.
Only send me diverse candidates because I'm paying you a lot of money. I'm going to utilize
work for me essentially.
Yeah, work them. You're paying them. We don't. And let's be honest with you, as if you're solo HR like I am, we don't have time to do it. No. So pay someone else to do it and just give them all our coders are the exact same. This is what our pool looks like at the moment. Can you help us make it a bit more diverse? Right. Can you only send me candidates that are different than what we already have? If I was doing HR, maybe it'd be different because actually, if all the HR women, maybe we need the opposite side a little bit. maybe we do need a guy.
We do need a man. No offense.
There's a lot of proactive things that people can do by creating female-only shortlists, for example. There's a very fine line to not being too one-sided as 100%. Well, because you also need to have that equal side on the other side as well. So one thing I mentioned was the male versus female ratio for interview process. Dell's got a sort of Michael Dell's committed to made a commitment for a D&I by 2030 to have a 50% male, 50% female workforce, which is a big target. But you can start that from the ground up. So looking at some figures, the graduates that we brought in for our sales teams, just under 50% were female. The assessment centres, we try and have a 50-50 split, male and female, because it means there's more chance that you're going to recruit female talent into the tech industry. So just some basic processes that work wonders going forward, and also making it at a leadership level as well, having leaders from female representation at a very senior level, because it goes from the top to the bottom.
And if I can add, I think it is very obvious that the gaming industry is not that diverse, right? And you always hear, but the candidates I get are not diverse. What can I do? It's like, if you're really serious, this is when you use your juniors, you get your juniors, you get your graduates, and make sure that they are diverse, because otherwise we're going to be stuck in this cycle of not being diverse, because there's but very small diverse talent already in the industry. Well, actually, when you're doing your juniors, when you're doing your interns, this is when we need to start from like football with your grassroots.
Yeah, grassroots essentially, yeah. Absolutely.
And then that means, maybe this generation, it's trickier, but we can start building up that future, getting your juniors in and some really good talent at the grassroots.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it needs to start, not needs to start, but there's some tactics that you can use to sort of anonymise the entries you get and remove this unconscious bias as well. So have nothing that relates to their gender, their age, anything like that. Because it goes beyond gender as well. I think you've got ageism, you've got, your racism, everything like that can sort of fall in line with this. And that's what we need to remove to encourage our pools to be far more diverse.
Yeah, please take your photos out of your CVs.
Yes, no, I don't want to see it.
I see them and I'm like, stop, just take it out. Like, you're setting yourself up.
Yes, I'll pull you to interview. I'd see you first then. That's fine. I don't want to see it now. So you can do things like that, like remove unnecessary requirements in postings. So there's a lot of things you can do before people are even sort of on the recruitment board to try and remove that bias. But then how do you measure the metrics? How do you sort of like you say you wanted 50-50, how do you measure that through your organisation?
We've got a tool that we can pull reports from the sort of recruitment platform. We can look at how many females have applied versus male, how many hires we've made in a space of how many a period of time for certain roles. Then I suppose you could grind that down to, is it senior level roles, what grade of role is it? And you can really start to dig into the detail and paint a lot of data. So data is the best way to track it.
Yes.
But also even something a visual sort of reference point, where if you look at maybe a team that's sitting all together, how many are males, how many are females. Things like that are very basic. And we've
had IT team's a lot of me.
It's like, and we've had it in the past where maybe we've look at an internal teams, maybe not just at Dell, but looked at the internal team and they've wanted to hire someone else internally, but they've already got maybe 75% male.
Right.
In HR, I'm not HR obviously, but HR kind of keep an eye on that.
Yes.
And say you should technically be interviewing more females.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But it comes with its challenges, because the tech sector is obviously very male orientated, but over time we're starting to see a bit of a shift.
Yes, it is nice to see. I know, again, keep saying this, you're a smaller company, but your experiences are going to be totally different. Can you use that kind of software, or do you sort of have to rely on sort of more traditional methods?
So we do have a brilliant software where, when for candidates, you can score them. So you score them on, you can have questions, do they meet these kind of things?
Okay.
So our coders, do they know C++? Don't ask me what that actually means. Do they know X, Y, and Z, the skills that you need? And then you can score them. So then when you're shortlisting, why have you not put this person to interview, but you put this person for the interview when on their score? Obviously, sometimes there's nuances, but using scorecards like that will help you get rid of the unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing that we do is being quite honest. At Surgeon,
It goes a long way.
I'm gonna are we not that diverse, and we interviewed a coder, and she asked, how many women in the company? And I had to put my hands up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
honestly, not many. However, the underneath the CEO, that next level, we're all women.
Yeah.
So whilst there's not a big split,
so they're in the leadership posts.
yeah, a lot of the leadership are women, and it is something we're actively trying to change.
Yeah.
And it's being honest. You don't lie. Don't be like, oh yeah, we're very diverse.
Yeah.
No, but this is what we're doing to change it, and we've recognised it. And small studios do fall into that habit sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's easy to turn around.
Oh yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you. So on our next question, what are some EDI practices or strategies you have implemented in your own workplace? And can you explain why having a diverse workforce is important in business productivity and development? Start with.
So we've got some initiatives that we operate externally, well, still part of Dell, but externally. So we do things such as called Digital Futures, which is where we get into schools, and it can be students from 13, 14.
Oh, I love that.
It's targeted from the age group. It's not just about females, because obviously if you capture people at a young age, it's going to capture ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, obviously. But it's proactively trying to encourage females into tech at a younger age. Rather than wait to graduate level, when they're at uni, we go to obviously a lot of careers fairs. We do a thing called Dell on Tour, which is very much about, we have it's a festival, I suppose, where we go to a number of unis across the UK in a short period of time. And that's running as well in Ireland and abroad, overseas.
Oh, okay.
But it all kind of happens roughly at the same time, where we're going out and meeting with students, and it can be focused on STEM subjects, STEM subjects which females are obviously part of. But the Digital Futures are a really good one because it's capturing the guys at a young age rather than waiting until they're kind of maybe past the stage of thinking about joining a technology sector. And we do something called STEM Aspire as well, which is an initiative which we run in partnerships with some of these unis across the UK, and it's encouraging those who identify as female and to choose a career in tech. It's more at the graduate age, but we do workshops throughout the year. It's a 12-month programme, and we do workshops based on things like imposter syndrome, how to apply for a job, and if you're in your final year at uni, and just basically give them a mentor, and they're a mentee, and it's mostly soft skills we're trying to develop, but it can be just confidence, simple as that, or how to communicate in a public place as well. So not about giving them a job at the end, but just give them the tools to enhance how they are as a person, or if they want to apply for a job, how they go about it. So it's just about ironing out those kind of skills in general.
Marvellous, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, I think at the moment, because we're still quite small and I'm still quite new to Sergeant Studios, what we're trying to do is making sure that the culture is good, because people talk. There's no point having all these great things, not saying that this is
Thank you.
Not that these great things, but if actually your culture is rubbish, if I'm honest, if I'm being So we've reviewing our policies, we've created a new parental leave policy, which is, if you think you're the primary carer, if you are the primary carer, then you get the 6 months leave, and it's we're not going to question it. We're not going to be like, you have to give them. It's not that. It's if you are the primary carer, you get 6 months leave, and it's like little things like that we're trying to do. We are looking at how can our sickness policy be inclusive. Making sure our flexible working is flexible working. So say if I woke up and my cramps are really bad, it's just been like, can I start a couple hours later, because
being flexible.
Making sure that we're flexible, inclusive. So firstly, we're recommended, and people are actually comfortable. And next year our plan is to, like I said earlier, get some more juniors in with that they are diverse. Yes,
I love that. I think making sure your workforce is cared and accounted for goes a long way. It really does. Yeah. There's some crazy stats. So 3 or 4 employees prefer to work for a diverse company. I mean, why wouldn't you? Yeah. But then some companies with diverse management teams are 21% more likely to achieve high profitability. So it's got to start from the top and trickle down. It really does. 100%.
And this is always what I preach. If it's a CEO, if the CEO is really on board, and luckily ours is, they're really on board, then it will trickle down. Yes. If you've got like a team here that are really passionate, but there's no buy-in.
No.
And it needs to be genuine.
It does.
It doesn't need to be, I love a policy, but it doesn't need to be a policy. It doesn't need to be your outreach. It just needs to be a genuine, we need to change this first before you start getting in all the techie stuff. Do you sit down, think about it? There's something we actually want, and it needs to be. And if it's not, you better get people in that can lead.
Yeah, can take it.
I think it's also, people focus a lot on hiring, equal through an equal approach, but I think you need to look after your guys you've got as well.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that will stay longer, they'll drive it forward, and if they're going to be with the company for longer, that cascades down the way as well.
100%.
So I think that's one thing you always keep in mind.
Staff can certainly see through a fake promotion, and it never goes well.
People are daft.
People aren't stupid now.
And what you don't want is to be recruiting loads of diverse people, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But then the culture's awful, and then they all leave.
Yes, no one believes in it. Yeah, it's like, well, I got slandered. Oh, great, okay.
Yeah,
never mind.
exactly.
Back to the drawing board. So yeah, just on our next question. So we mentioned unconscious bias. So in recruitment, it refers to forming opinions about candidates based on first impressions. Can you give an example of unconscious bias in your workplace and how individuals can address
Good question.
it? Well, maybe not in your, that's too broad. Maybe not in your workplace, but in general, if you know of a situation, how would it be addressed?
Yeah, actually, I can use in one of my old companies ages ago. I started hiring people that were like me.
Okay.
Which at the time is brilliant because everyone else was like the hiring manager, and the hiring manager was white male. So everyone that they hired were white male, middle class. And then when I started hiring people I would even think about this even before I even had, I was just not just a hiring manager, but before I had even got the knowledge, I was just hiring people like me. Yeah. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh. And then people would comment, they'd be like, why do you keep hiring young black people? And I'm like,
why not?
And I'm like, didn't even realise that's what I was doing, but actually, why not? They're working hard, they're getting the job done. They're like, oh, but it's like you're trying to make it a fan base. It's like, no, it's not. Yeah. It's like, but this is perfect of unconscious bias. I didn't realise I was doing it. It was for the best.
Yes.
But the person before me didn't realise. And then when you start doing it, it's like, oh.
Yeah. It's
really
easy said than done.
Sorry,
no, go by.
Because it's also really interesting that you recognise that.
Yeah.
And you're part of a role that's not meant to think that way, but you did. But you've obviously realised as well. So, but yeah, for me, I think it's not my current workplace, but I think just generically, people unconscious bias can be something as they see a name of a person, and they can automatically assume that they're from a particular country, they're a particular race, for example, or they can be male or female based on their name. So that's something that's probably quite common in a lot of places. I know that maybe some recruitment agencies or maybe take names of candidates to keep it exclusive, and the client will look at the CV and decide to interview them based on what's on the CV, skills and experience rather than their name.
Yeah, that's a brilliant tool.
They take things like education off and all that sort of stuff because it can be, we want someone from a university that's maybe higher end to think in their mind than others. So there's a lot of components to it. But making a judgment just based on a CV name opens up a can of worms for a lot.
It really does, absolutely. I think we've got time for one more. Yes, fabulous. So what are some of the best practices you could have for writing inclusive job descriptions? I know you're specifically involved in the process, but it all starts with the actual list. So what things can we do to make those more inclusive? I'll start with you, Jess.
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to do is try and make sure that no matter what role you're hiring for, that they all look similar. Because if all the hiring managers are writing their own job descriptions, it then becomes different standards, different wording, and it gets a bit messy. So our marketing and communications manager, Dana, she's brilliant. So she wrote all the, because she's great with communications. So she wrote all the job descriptions, and she made sure the language was inclusive. There was no she, he, because it's unnecessary. Like, and sometimes you don't even realise, and she's really good at what words sound masculine that you may not even think of. Yeah. And if you don't have someone like Dana, don't steal her. There are tools that you can run job descriptions through that change words that you don't even think are more masculine, but they are. Wow. And you see it a lot in like coders. Yes. A lot of the language sounds, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true, and it's science. Stuff like that is really, really good. So that's
Wow, I had no idea that tool existed.
Yeah,
That's really interesting and a very valid point.
Eyes, you know,
and literally eyes.
If your team are all white males, fine. Get someone else to just have a little read through.
Yes.
Get your more diverse groups to have a read through. How does this sit with you?
Yeah.
How does it feel to you?
Yeah.
Does it feel
like a white male?
yeah. And it's true, because sometimes you read the job description, it's the first thing you see of a company, and you're like, why are the words here so corporate? It doesn't need to be corporate. We work in games.
Yeah.
It don't need to be. It just has that feeling that I wouldn't fit in.
Yes.
And that's what people don't understand. Sometimes it's a feeling, being a minority reading something, and you're like, I don't think I'd fit into this company. It's not even intentional. But I've had that so many times. I've looked at stuff and I'm like, they're not gonna like all of this.
Yeah, then recruiting a person, not a role. I think that's the difference. Yeah, absolutely. Scott?
Yeah, and very, very similar, what you've mentioned already. So things like, it's called a gender decoder in terms of the job description. You pretty much put a job spec in and it makes changes. So rather than maybe build relationships, it would say nurture, which would be more softer.
Okay.
So it's just basic stuff like that. You mentioned already, we've got templates which are pretty much set in standard. We don't make massive changes to them. And the marketing piece we do, we've got graphics that we'll use a lot of. So we've got LinkedIn graphics that we've used. It shows a lot of female-driven sort of infographics as well, rather than just a male at a computer with a suit on.
Businessman.
So it just softens the I suppose the reputation that people might have already of your organisation, and just kind of, like you said already, just kind of being a bit more open and working with hiring managers who might not be fully on board with you yet. And over time, you see a massive shift, and it's definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And unfortunately, social media is a big thing, whether you like it or not. Utilising social media for the good. You know, if you can't afford to pay for these boards, tweet your job posts, put them on LinkedIn, put them, you know, in the game industry, put them where gamers are. Gamers and people that like games are on Twitter, and
that's where we are.
Whether you like it or not. Oh, sorry, X.
X. I'm
sorry.
not calling it X. Sorry, Elon. It's not happening.
Put them on there, because not everyone uses a LinkedIn, right? And if you actually want a bigger pool, maybe sending it to, you know, you have loads of different groups. I'm not going to like reel them off right now, but following more diverse people will help as well. Believe it or not.
No, oddly enough.
Widen your pool.
So in terms, just to go back to your candidates, if I've got time, how do you collect feedback from their interview process? Is that something your organisations actively do? Yeah, Jess?
Yeah. So ask them. Every time I've recruited someone, I ask them.
Oh, okay.
Always. How did you find the recruitment? Is there any point that made you feel a bit like? And then if we can, we action it.
Okay.
And you know, even sometimes when people ask for feedback, they'll be like, "Oh, you rejected me. Can I get feedback?" I'll give them feedback, and I'll be like, "How did you find the?" You do get things that you can do automatically, but for me, I think personable is always the best.
Yes.
I'm not saying it will be everyone, but like if we have 200 applicants, I'll try at least do. I know it doesn't sound a lot, but it is a lot. Like 10 going back. They've asked for feedback. I'll go back and be like, "Here's your feedback," but actually, how were we? Yeah. And that's all it takes.
Did you find you get positive responses?
Yeah, some people are just unnecessary. They're like, "Oh, well, you just didn't look at my CV," and I'm like, "Oh, we did. That's not true. That's fine." Okay. But if you actually want to make a change, you have to take that people won't like what you have to do, and it's putting your pride aside and people going, "Well, actually, your job ad was difficult to read. Actually, we just didn't see it," or like in these spaces going, or the hiring manager was a bit rude.
Oh.
Never had that recently.
But we'll go that back.
It's putting your pride aside and going,
yeah, maybe we should look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's two ways.
Because we focus on a lot of the negative part, but also ask candidates whether basically be open and honest. Did you enjoy the interview? And they might say no, and then that's when you maybe delve into why, what could be done better. And it can be start from when they applied from the CV. It can be the full process as well. So any general feedback is good, regardless if it's positive or negative, because you need to build upon it.
100%.
But also recognise when you're doing a good job as well.
Yes. I think we might be out of questions. Do we have any questions from the group? No? In that case, thank you very much, both of you. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And I've learned a bit more about the recruitment process and EDI. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
No problem.